we're in a series called Fallen Empire, and we're looking at the theme of Babylon, which really flows from cover to cover in the Bible. So you can study books of the Bible, and we do that here at Counterculture, but you can also study themes of the Bible. And all the way in Genesis, you've got Babylon. You go to the end of the Bible, Revelation, you got Babylon. It's everywhere. And Babylon is an archetype. It was a real empire, but it's an archetype and a symbol of all human empires that are built on pride and power and greed. And so we've been looking at that because it's certainly relevant to every age, but it's certainly relevant to our age in particular. And I've titled my message today, Under Pressure. The year is 2004. It's summertime. And nothing epitomizes my 8th grade year more than having a can of Axe body spray and a lighter and making a blowtorch. All right? Nothing takes me back more than that experience. But on this particular day, we're not just making blowtorches with our just god-awful cologne. We are in a car at Sonic eating cheese conies and tater tots and drinking ocean water. And I'm with older kids who have their driver's license. And one of them takes a lighter and puts lighter fluid or lighter fuel into his mouth and is somehow able to breathe fire into the sedan compact that we are sitting there in. And I think he's really cool, and I want to impress him, so I attempt this. And I think I want to fit in. I want to be cool like the guys. And I do breathe fire. But when I breathe fire, it goes through my nasal passages and singes all of my nose hair and burns it. And I will never forget that smell as long as I live. When you try to fit in, you sometimes make decisions that you regret. That's why I've titled my message today, Under Pressure. In addition to the Queen song that Vanilla Ice plagiarized and ripped off, we all know what it's like to feel like under pressure, don't we? We've all experienced those moments in our life where we just are with a group of people and we get talked into cutting class, or we sneak out after dark, or we go to that party, and then before we know it, there's flashing blue and red lights behind us, and all of a sudden, what seemed so fun and so cool at the time isn't so great. Then we get cut from the team, or we get, grounded till the next millennia or something. We've all been in those situations. But peer pressure doesn't stop just because you become an adult. We all still experience it. There are forces that push on us. And the Bible says that the world is not neutral. And when I say world, I think it's really important to distinguish. The Bible is not opposed to the physical reality around us. The Bible says the physical reality is good. So it's not talking about creation. It's not talking about nature. When I talk about the world, we're talking about the value system that is contrary to God. In other words, Babylon. And the world, Babylon, it is a force that presses in on us. The world is not neutral. It exerts energy upon us. There are forces that exist that are trying to influence you. Specifically the little devices we carry in our pockets, but really just all cultures, all societies, they're trying to influence the way you spend your money, trying to influence the way you spend your time. There are billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies that are fighting for our attention. There's things trying to shape what we believe, trying to shape what we love, trying to shape our affections, trying to shape our very lives. And if you're a follower of Jesus, and if you're not a follower of Jesus, we're so glad that you're here. This church exists to welcome skeptics. But if you are a follower of Jesus, I would encourage you to memorize this passage. This is Romans 12, verse 2. It's written by the Apostle Paul, some guy who had his life completely flipped upside down by Jesus and became the biggest proponent of him ever. But he says this to people living in Rome: do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. There they are in Rome, the Babylon of their day. And it'd be so easy to just want to blend in, to just become like all the other Romans, when in Rome after all, right? But he says, no, Christians are non-conformists. Christians are meant to be a counterculture. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. And it would be an absolute tragedy to come here on Sunday mornings, week after week, or for some of us, it's once a month or whatever. It would be an absolute tragedy to come here and to just have nothing about your life change. That your life, other than the fact that you go to 1220 Southwest Taylor a couple times a month on a Sunday morning, for your life to look identical to everyone else in the city, that would be an ultimate tragedy. To find ourselves in a place where we are being changed by the city more than we are changing the city. So we have people in front of us who serve as examples, because this is hard. To live different, to be a counterculture, to go against the stream. That is incredibly challenging, to live in Babylon but not become a Babylonian. So we have set before us in the passage that Yemi just read to us the ultimate archetypes of people who choose not to leave Babylon. Remember, we talked about this last week, and if you didn't have it, you can catch the podcast. There's a QR code on the paper in front of you. But we talked about last week, these four guys, they choose not to leave Babylon. They choose not to become just like Babylon, but instead they choose to be a light in Babylon. And they serve as a case study and an archetype for us of how we are meant to live faithfully in the world around us. So, let's go. Let's check it out. Verse 3, the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of the court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude of every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve in the king's palace. So, we saw last week, God's people, they've started to act like Babylon for 400 years. God warned them. But then he says, hey, you want to be like Babylon? To Babylon you will go. And they get ripped out of Judah and Israel, taken into exile, taken in chains under this megalomaniac Nebuchadnezzar. And here we find that he takes the young men who are intelligent, they have charisma, they're handsome. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel was a snack, all right? He was a man of God with a rockin' bod. This is Daniel. And thoroughbreds, these boys. It kind of reminds me of Men in Black. We're looking for the best of the best. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was looking for the best of the best. And why does he take the best of the best? Because if he takes all of the intelligent people, all of the charismatic people, all of those people, there's no one to rebel. There's no one to lead an uprising. There's no one to lead a rebellion. So what does he do with these guys? Is he takes them into total indoctrination. It is a deprogramming, reprogramming, assimilation, indoctrination campaign to erase their Hebrew identity and make them into Babylonians. And that's their pretty genius, evil, wicked, but genius strategy to crush their adversaries and then exploit them. So that's what's going on. That's what's happening with Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And their whole worlds get flipped. Everything about it gets flipped. And the first thing we want to learn from these guys, how they live in Babylon, is that we have to pick the right battles. So here they are. imagine this. Your temple has been burned. Your family members have been slaughtered. People are being taken into slavery. You are being taken in a mass deportation. And now you have to serve in the king's court. And they have this brilliant strategy to brainwash you and to do social conditioning on you, where they're going to serve you the most delicious food you've ever seen in your life, giving you a limitless budget, a limitless supply of the king's wine. And there you are in that situation. What do you do? Well, we see from these four guys, they pick the right battles. It says he was to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the table. They were trained for 3 years, and they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. The chief officials now gave them Babylonian names. So Daniel becomes Belshazzar, Hananiah becomes Shadrach, Mishael becomes Meshach, and Azariah becomes Abednego. And if you grew up in church at all, or maybe you just stumbled on it on Netflix, I will never forget Rack, Shack, and Benny. It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego becomes Rack, Shack, and Benny. That will forever live rent-free in my head. But here are these 4 Jewish boys, and they're obviously good-looking. These are just some handsome lads, But they get taken into the king's service, and they're going to learn mythological texts. They're going to learn astronomy, mathematics. They're going to learn, ancient medicine. And we actually have tablets from Babylon, which Daniel would have read. We actually have these tablets preserved for us. But this is what's so crazy. These guys, at first it looks like they're just becoming Babylonians because they take a Babylonian job. They don't fight. They don't try to, kill their officers. They don't rebel. They don't have a revolt. They take a Babylonian job. They take Babylonian names. They learn Babylonian literature. They master the Babylonian language. But they refuse to worship Babylonian gods at all costs. Do you see that? Do you see that blend? They don't object to take the names. They don't object to learn the language. They don't even object to learn the false mythology and the false religion. They do all of that. They're likely wearing Babylonian clothing. By all outward appearances, they have become Babylonians. But if you know the book of Daniel at all, and if you're new to church, I'm super stoked to teach you about this, but they're willing to die. They're willing to be roasted alive in a blazing furnace. They're willing to be eaten alive by lions rather than worship the Babylonian gods. It's this blend of what's been said, loyalty and subversion. This biblical scholar named D. Smith Christopher, he calls this the wisdom warrior. The wisdom warrior. That not every hill is worth dying on. Imagine if Daniel would have said, they came and gave him the name Belshazzar, and he goes, throw me in the den of lions. You can't call me Belshazzar. Imagine if they tried to teach them Babylonian, and Meshach goes, burn me now. I'm not learning that language. But some Christians today want to pick the wrong battles, don't they? There are some Christians, some of us, maybe in this room, who are prone to choosing the wrong battles. To say that it's a scorched earth policy with the world. To say, we yield no ground. We give no quarter. It is total war with the world in our culture wars, in our politics, and in the way we only read Christian books. We only listen to Christian music. We only watch Christian movies. You can only hang out with Christian friends. But that is not biblical Christianity. That's not what Jeremiah 29 shows. That's not what the book of Daniel shows. And it's not what the life of Jesus shows either. See, they pick their battles. Isn't this nuanced? Isn't this so interesting? The way they choose their battles. Verse 17, this will make some fundamentalists head spin. Read verse 17. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. God gives them the ability to get PhDs in Babylon. God gives them the ability to get master's degree in these false religions. And here's the deal. We know from Daniel 2:20, there was real wisdom in Babylon. Daniel 2:20 says God gives wisdom to everyone. God lifts up kings. So there was real wisdom, but there was also a lot of falsehood. And here's where it comes to us. Here's where I think you can get some handles on this. You could take this home with you and live it out throughout the week. You can, apply it to your Netflix account, apply it to your TikTok, apply it to the way you raise your kids whenever you have kids. That's this. Be a sophisticated consumer. Don't just indiscriminately consume media. Yes, watch secular media, watch Babylonian media, read books, get degrees in it, know it inside and out, but evaluate the messages that you're receiving. Hey, what's redemptive in this movie? What's redemptive in this song? What things can I learn from this? What can I take away from this? What needs to be resisted? What is bowing the knee to Baal? What is bowing the knee to Babylon and Marduk? And what in this movie is inviting me to compromise and trying to influence me? Be a sophisticated learner. Be a sophisticated listener, a sophisticated reader. Because if you don't evaluate the media you are playing, then you are being played. So, Daniel chooses his battles. That's the wisdom warrior. That's like my favorite thing in the world. I just think it's so cool. All right. The next thing is this. Integrity on the small stage will prepare us for the big stage. Integrity on the small stage will prepare us for the big stage. So our message is under pressure. And there are fish that live at the absolute lowest depths of the ocean. Imagine this. I mean, the Mariana Trench and just these deep sea creatures. I got one to show you here. I'll be honest, a lot of them are hideous. I tried to pick the cutest one. I tried to pick the cutest one that I could find. But they live at such low levels, they have 6,000 to 15,000 pounds of pressure putting down on them. How do they not just explode? How do they not just burst the way like a submarine would? Or, just like a tin can just get crushed? Isn't this astonishing? Well, here's the deal. The pressure on the inside pushing out is equal to the pressure pushing on them. Isn't that astonishing? The power on the inside is just as strong as the power on the outside. And that is how you thrive in Babylon. But how do you get to the point where the strength inside of you, so you don't just get crushed like a tin can when you go out into Portland, when you go to your jobs, when you're hanging out with your non-Christian friends, trying to be a light, but I'm here, I'm outnumbered, I'm outgunned, I'm outmanned, I'm outplanned. I'm going to start quoting Hamilton here. But how do you not get crushed like that? How do you not do it? Well, you got to have strength on the inside that's equal to the power on the outside. How do you get that? You start small. You start small. Verse 8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. He asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. So here's Daniel. He's wearing Babylonian clothing. He's speaking Babylonian languages. He's got a Babylonian name. He's mastering the Babylonian literature. But there's one place where he goes, I may be in Babylon, but I don't have to let Babylon in me. And he makes this choice, and you probably have heard of kosher. You're at the supermarket. To this day, Jews eat kosher. And God had this symbolic thing that to make them separate. Some people actually think that there were health benefits to their diet in Leviticus, but it was also symbolic just of being separate from the world and distinct. And food really is a significant marker of culture. It's interesting that he chooses food as the place that he draws the line, because food really is a big thing about culture, right? If you have family members come visit Portland, you probably don't just pack them brown bag lunches the whole time they're here, do you? You probably take them out to eat someplace. It's like, oh, we got to go to Cannes. It's got a Michelin star. It's the greatest restaurant in the country. We got to go to Broder, the Scandinavian place on Mississippi. We got to go over here to Screen Door. We got to go to, got to go to Tusk, the place on Burnside. You're just overwhelmed that you can't even figure out how many places to take him to. It's so got to go to Proud Mary's. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. It's this Australian place that's up in Northeast. We got to go to Departure. It's got a rooftop bar. I mean, where it really comes in just insane is with the coffee, right? The coffee is just where it's out of control. I mean, Hart coffee, Roseline coffee, Kova coffee, Prince coffee. We're just swimming in coffee practically. I've lived here for 6 years. This city has ruined me, okay? It has ruined me. I travel elsewhere. I'm like, don't give me that garbage water, you peasant. It's ridiculous. But culture comes through food, doesn't it? We have a saying, the way to a person's heart is through their stomach. And Nebuchadnezzar knew that. Babylon knew that. He understood them. He had them Michelin star rated, Zagat award winning, top chef of Babylon, just chopping things up for them left and right. And what Nebuchadnezzar's thinking, he's going, I'm going to have these Jewish boys eating out of the palm of my hand. I'm going to just completely condition them, completely reprogram them. And how easy would it be to go, here I am, ripped from my homeland, taken from everything I love, a captive. Well, at least the food's good. At least the wine's good. Wouldn't that be so easy? And it's pretty interesting because wine actually is kosher. So he could have had the wine. Why does he not have the wine? Well, I think I understand. Wine is about celebration. It's about feasting. It's about delighting. And so many people in this situation would say, you know what, I'm going to milk the perks as much as possible. I'm going to get all the benefits out of here. Aren't we most tempted when life's not going the way we want? Isn't that when you feel most tempted? When it's just been a horrible week and you're just stressed out and you're like, oh man, just need some relief. Isn't that when? But what Daniel is showing us is this. When everything in your life feels like it's going wrong, you can still choose to do what's right. That's what Daniel's profound example for us is. And so he chooses not to celebrate because he's thinking to himself, the perks, the benefits, the bonuses of Babylon, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to feast on the fat of this system of power and exploitation. I am not going to pop bottles bought with blood money. And so he draws a line. He says, I'm not going there. And this really sets the stage because Shadrach, Meshach, Rakshak, and Benny, they join with him in this. And in chapter 3, there's the famous story of the blazing furnace. And we probably should get the VeggieTales out of our mind because this is horrible. It says in Jeremiah 29 that Nebuchadnezzar roasted 2 people in a fire. That is so horrifying. That is like demonic and tyrannical and despotic and just every bad word you can think of. But here are these guys, and the food thing is kind of a small thing, right? It's kind of trivial. You're like, you're going to just not eat, you're not going to drink? Like, you're kind of a square, Daniel. You're kind of a loser. Like, lighten up, buddy. But here's the deal. Integrity on the small stage prepared them for the big stage. Because when Nebuchadnezzar sets up a giant idol to himself like a complete narcissist and says, I demand absolute allegiance. I want your soul, boys. I want your total loyalty. For 3 years, they had been practicing resistance. They had been practicing subversion. And those small acts of faithfulness and integrity prepared them. So you get to chapter 3, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have this line where they go, our God is able to deliver us from the blazing furnace. And he will. But even if not, we still won't serve your gods. It's like, oh my gosh, what baddies those guys. Those are some bad brothers. Like, they're just out of control. Like, so much courage. He's like, hey, our ashes, they won't even worship you. Like, it's just, that. How do you get there? How do you get to that kind of integrity? How do you get to have that kind of internal strength? How do you get to that kind of conviction? Here's the deal. Honoring God in the small things sets you up to honor God in the big things. Honoring God in the things that aren't impressive is what makes you the kind of person who makes history, and it is impressive. And I got something else to say. You're like, well, I don't really care about making history. Good for them. That's cool. We're reading about them 3,000 years later. That's nice. Here's the deal. I hate to break it to you. There's a furnace coming for you. There is. There is suffering en route for each one of us. Right now, my sister is in the NICU with her newborn baby, in the intensive care unit. There's a furnace coming your way. And how do you not become the kind of person who just crumbles? How do you not become the kind of person who just goes poof in a poof of smoke? Well, courage with the food prepared them for the furnace. And so right now, you can make the decision like Daniel through 1,000 tiny decisions to become the person who doesn't crumple under pressure. Just waking up in the morning. Nobody's going to put you down in church history for this, but just waking up in the morning, read your Bible and pray. Just take 15 minutes, 20 minutes out of your day. Just say, God, I need you today. I want to be a light in Babylon. I want to love people. I want to be like you. I'm just going to honor you with 20 minutes in the morning. Just day after day after day. It's choosing to serve on a team. It's choosing to join the team, or choosing to honor God with your money, to tithe. I'm not going to go like super long into this, but I think so much of Babylon is built on greed. And the practice of tithing, giving God 10% of your money, it's a lot like honoring God with the food. It's just saying, God, I'm not going to worship money. I'm not going to freak out about how I pay my bills. I'm going to trust that you're my provider. I'm going to trust that everything comes from you, and I have the opportunity to be a part of what you're doing in the world. It's just setting aside time to pray with your spouse, or pray with your friend, or it's just those little tiny small decisions. They form you so that your faithfulness with the small things eventually becomes faithfulness with the big things. I got a quick little illustration of this. There was this reporter who was meeting with Kobe Bryant, and he was supposed to interview him, and he said, I'll meet you at 5. And the guy goes, okay, cool, 5 p.m. He goes, no, 5 a.m. All right? And so the reporter shows up, at this gym, and there's Kobe Bryant. He's like so excited to watch him. He's like, this is going to be amazing. He's training. He's doing his practice. I'm going to see him doing the craziest slam dunks and the wildest moves and pivots and all this. And he was just there like doing layups, just doing the typical things. You do it and the whole hour goes by, and he goes, Kobe, it was really cool to watch you practice, but I noticed you just did the basics. And he goes, I'm Kobe Bryant because I never stopped doing the basics. And that's what this passage is inviting us into. Just doing those small, repetitive things. That's how you become Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's how you become Daniel. That's how you become a light in Babylon. Now, verse 15. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So, they run this test, and it's a long passage. Yemi read it for us. But they run this little experiment, because like Daniel, he gets turned down at first, but he's the wisdom warrior, right? He knows how to pivot. He knows how to maneuver. And they get him to run this little test. And the guy's like, you're going to get me killed, man. If you guys are all skinny and emaciated, like I'm going to lose my head. Nebuchadnezzar's not going to have that. But God's with them. And it says, so the guard took away their choice food and their wine, and he gave them vegetables instead. And all the vegans in here can be happy. You can underline that verse in your Bible. Just go for it. Just take the W. It's great. But there's a broader principle at play here, because at the end it says they are 10 times better than all the other wise men who are taken from all the other provinces, and probably some of the Jews who just gave in and compromised. They're 10 times better. And what's Daniel chapter 1 telling us? It's telling us this, that the ways of God are actually better than the ways of this world. Do you believe that? The ways of God are actually better than the ways of this world. I love the way the New King James Version and several translations puts it, where it says resolved in the NIV, but it says Daniel purposed in himself not to defile himself. Purpose purifies. Purpose purifies. When you have a mission, when you have something you're meant to do, you have something you're meant to accomplish. He goes, I'm a light in Babylon. I'm God's chosen people. I'm his special possession. I am meant to bless the nations. I have a calling. I have a purpose. I have a future that I'm not going to sell just for a fleeting feeling, just for a few moments of pleasure. I'm not going to just give it all away. I have a calling. I have something that I'm meant to live for. I don't have to go to that party. I don't have to keep going with my friend to the fourth bar. I can call it a night. I don't have to keep going on those destructive websites. Instead I can pray with my friend from the dinner party, even when I do mess up. I don't have to go back to those same drugs. I don't have to get back in that toxic relationship that I knew was bad for me. I don't have to do that summer fling that I'm going to regret later. I don't have to get into that bad investment. I don't have to spend more money just because I make more money, but instead I can give more money so that I can serve God and serve the poor. It's having a purpose. It's having a mission. Purpose purifies. The reality is, what feels good doesn't always end good. A couple years ago, I was listening to an interview with Jan Wenner. And Jan Wenner was the founder of Rolling Stone magazine. And it was an interesting interview. I read Rolling Stone. I read Babylonian literature. But there was a line that jumped out at me where Jan Wenner goes, I founded Rolling Stone magazine to promote sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Just unironically, just said that. Well, and then there's sometimes in your life where things just line up so weird that it feels like it can't be a coincidence. That same week, I think the next day, I was at a gas station, and I saw this houseless person who he was sitting behind like the tire pump, like the thing where you pump your tires. And I just went over to check on him. I just want to see how he's doing. And I ended up, buying him some food and a gift card or whatever. And I was just sitting there chatting with him. His name was Steve. And talking to Steve, and I was like, hey man, what happened? How'd you end up on the streets? He goes, I'm on the streets because of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was within a day of me listening to that podcast. And it was just kind of eye-opening. It was just whoa, that was really weird, and really interesting. The truth is you can gain the whole world but lose your soul. Because not everybody's going to end up homeless. I'm not saying that. I'm not giving some kind of alarmism or whatever like that. But you can gain the whole world and lose your soul. I don't know if any of you guys watched that movie Bohemian Rhapsody. Title and message, Under Pressure. And Bohemian Rhapsody, depicted the life of Freddie Mercury. Just unbelievable talent, unbelievable charisma, just dynamite voice. But he would throw parties, and these were parties that Nebuchadnezzar and Caesar Nero would feel right at home at. Because I've read about these. They would actually hire, this is horrible, it's pretty prejudiced, but they would hire little people to walk around with trays of cocaine on their head. At these parties. They just had they were just constantly trying to outdo themselves. They're just out of control. But Freddie Mercury said this, you can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man. And that's the most bitter type of loneliness. Success has brought me world idolization and millions of dollars, millions of pounds. But it's prevented me from having the one thing that we all need, a loving, ongoing relationship. What feels good doesn't always end good. We know how Freddie Mercury tragically died of the AIDS virus. But I think there at the end, he kind of alludes. He goes, I thought the money was going to give me fulfillment. It didn't. I thought that global recognition and playing the stadiums and just the biggest crowd singing my songs back to me and just millions of people chanting my name. I thought that would bring me satisfaction. But I've had sex with countless people, more people than I can even remember. But the one thing I haven't had is that long, steady relationship. That's the thing. But here's the deal. I'm a married man, and I love my wife. I adore my wife. She's wonderful. But I think here's the reality. Finding the right person will not satisfy your soul. You think meeting the right person is finally going to fix something deep inside of you? You give them divine status. You think, you're my goddess, you're my soulmate, you're my everything. They will let you down in a second. They will break your heart. The fine wine of Babylon will not satisfy us. The delicacies of the empire will not truly nourish us. What Freddie Mercury was looking for and what each of us are looking for isn't just a relationship with another flawed, broken human being. That's just double the brokenness. What each of us are looking for is the love of God. That's what he was longing for. That's what he was thirsting for. Real joy is found in Jesus. He has a future for you. And it may not be easy. It may be scary. It may require bravery, but it is leading somewhere better. And if we always take the path of least resistance, we may end up in a place that we don't want to be. What feels good doesn't always end good. But Jesus invites us to live for the long game, to live for something better. Final thought this morning is that you don't have to survive Babylon alone. I always love doing a little recap. So, we got to pick the right battles. Integrity on the small stage will prepare us for the big stage. And then finally, you don't have to survive Babylon alone. I think the reason why Daniel was so successful is because he had Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He had Rak, Shak, and Benny. That is why Daniel was able to be Daniel. And this is the key to being a light in Babylon while not becoming exactly like Babylon. Because I've been at pains to show you, the Bible doesn't tell us to be these weirdos who just live in our own little cul-de-sac and subculture. Gated community. We're meant to be out in the world, reading the books, listening to the music, making the friends. But how do we not just cave in and become Babylonians? Well, here's the key. You got to have your own little inner circle. You got to have a crew who loves Jesus as much as you do. That's the key. We don't just do dinner parties here and this summer we're going to do hangouts, and me and my wife are going to open up our house every Wednesday night. Anybody could just come. We do Question Christianity. We do these things. We do it. Why? Because we want you to build friendships so you have a Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So you've got a crew around you that keeps you from going back and making those decisions that you regret later over and over and over again. Lone rangers are dead rangers. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. That's why I also want to invite you, to prioritize worship and community. Prioritize it. Like I said, I want you to go hiking. I want you to go on vacation. I want you to go to the coast and just have all the best times. Heck, go together, some of you. That'd be wonderful. But, make it a priority to come through the 5 p.m. Make it a priority to stay in community. Because here's the reality. The world is not neutral. Babylon doesn't go on vacation. We take a little break from church. But if Jesus isn't the dominant influence in our life, something else will be. Mark my words. But here's the best thing. Oh yeah, well, say one more thing. I love how it says he purposed in his heart. You have to purpose in your heart. Right living, honoring God, being a light, word holiness basically means to be a counterculture. Holiness, being a light, it doesn't happen on accident. You've got a purpose in your heart. And today could be the day that you do that, where you say, God, I want to be different. I want to be a light. God, I don't want to leave Babylon like some weirdo, religious, uptight, thing, just trying to escape. I don't want to become just like Babylon, because then I've got nothing to offer this world that's thirsty. Lord, I want to be a light in Babylon. You could purpose in your heart today. You could pray that. And then as the band comes back up on stage, so we can't survive in Babylon alone, but here's the thing. It's not just about being alone with our friends. There's something more available to us. Daniel 3:24-25. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? They replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, and look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. What's going to give you courage to live life under pressure? What's going to give you that inner strength, that inner power that survives the furnace? I'll tell you what it is. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was under so much pressure that the physician Luke says he began to sweat great drops of blood. His capillaries were bursting. That's a real medical condition. under horrible stress. His capillaries were bursting. He was under so much stress. In an empire not different than Nebuchadnezzar's, pounded spikes into his wrists and flogged him and pulverized him and humiliated him, mocked him. But here's the thing, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. Because the Bible says that he became accursed for us. And that it pleased the Lord to crush him and to put him to grief. And when we see Jesus out of love, it says in the Bible, the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. When you see Jesus crushed for you out of love, willingly laying himself down, and you see the weight upon his shoulders and him willingly carrying it and overcoming it, it will make the pressure that you and I face, the furnaces that you and I face, light. Amen.
We're so glad you checked out this message. We exist because of supportive people like you. If you want to give, go to counterculture.church.